Security documentation and governance metrics exist to turn stated intent into measurable accountability, closing the gap between what an organization says it values and what it actually does.
Without documentation, expectations drift and decisions rely on memory or informal agreement. Without metrics, leaders are forced to rely on anecdotes, instincts, or the loudest voice in the room. Together, documentation and metrics create a system that makes security observable, reviewable, and improvable over time. They allow leadership to ask not only whether controls exist, but whether they operate consistently and reduce risk as intended. When these elements are designed well, security oversight becomes disciplined rather than reactive.
Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series.
Documentation in this context includes policies, standards, procedures, records, and approved exceptions, each serving a distinct governance purpose. Policies express intent and mandatory requirements, while standards define minimum acceptable implementations. Procedures describe how work is performed, turning requirements into repeatable action. Records capture evidence that actions occurred, decisions were made, and controls operated.
Approved exceptions document where requirements were not met, why that deviation was accepted, and under what conditions.
Together, these artifacts create traceability from strategy to execution, making it possible to understand how decisions were implemented and where accountability resides.
Governance metrics summarize performance, coverage, and exposure in a way that supports leadership oversight without requiring technical deep dives. Performance metrics describe how well processes operate, such as response times, review completion rates, or remediation cycles. Coverage metrics describe whether controls are applied where required, such as system enrollment, logging enablement, or access review participation. Exposure metrics highlight areas where risk is elevated, such as unresolved high-severity findings or increasing exception volume. The goal is not to overwhelm leadership with detail, but to provide a reliable signal of program health. Effective governance metrics enable informed questions rather than defensive explanations. Leading indicators are metrics designed to predict changes in risk posture before harm occurs, making them especially valuable for proactive management. Examples include patch latency, accumulation of unreviewed access, control coverage gaps, or increasing backlog of unresolved findings. These indicators do not represent failure on their own, but they signal conditions that often precede incidents or audit issues. Leading indicators support early intervention, allowing teams to correct course before consequences materialize. Their value lies in trend analysis rather than single data points, because gradual deterioration is often more dangerous than sudden failure. When leading indicators are tracked consistently, they act as an early warning system for governance. Lagging indicators report outcomes that have already occurred, such as incidents, outages, losses, or audit findings. These metrics are important because they reflect real impact, not just potential risk. However, they are inherently reactive because they measure events after damage has been done. Lagging indicators are best used to validate whether leading indicators and controls are meaningful, rather than as the sole measure of program effectiveness. A program with no reported incidents may still be fragile if leading indicators show growing weakness. Balanced use of both types of indicators provides a more accurate picture of security posture. Metrics only become useful when they have clear definitions, consistent data sources, and stable collection methods. A metric must define exactly what is being measured, how it is calculated, and what qualifies for inclusion or exclusion. Consistent data sources ensure that changes reflect reality rather than shifts in tooling or reporting scope.
Stable collection methods allow trends to be interpreted confidently over time.
Without this discipline, metrics fluctuate unpredictably, undermining trust and leading stakeholders to ignore them. Clear definitions also reduce debate during reviews, keeping focus on decisions rather than on arguing about numbers.
Normalization provides context that makes metrics meaningful, especially in environments that change in size or activity level.
Raw counts can be misleading when population size, asset count, or transaction volume varies over time. Normalization adjusts metrics relative to a denominator, such as number of systems, users, or events, allowing fair comparison across periods.
For example, an increase in incidents may be expected if monitored scope expands significantly.
Contextualized metrics prevent false alarms and false reassurance.
When normalization is applied consistently, leadership can interpret trends with confidence rather than speculation.
Dashboards and reports serve different but complementary roles in governance communication. Dashboards aggregate metrics into a concise visual or summary format that supports rapid situational awareness. Reports provide interpretation, narrative, and decision relevance, explaining why metrics look the way they do and what actions are recommended. Dashboards answer what is happening, while reports explain why it matters and what should be done next. Confusing these roles often leads to either oversimplified reporting or excessive detail without direction. Effective governance uses both formats intentionally to support different audiences and decision needs.
Metrics require evidence, and that evidence comes from logs, tickets, approvals, configuration snapshots, and other operational records.
Evidence demonstrates that reported values are grounded in observable activity rather than subjective assessment.
It also supports audits and investigations by allowing reviewers to trace metrics back to source artifacts.
When evidence collection is automated and integrated into workflows, it reduces manual effort and increases reliability.
Weak evidence undermines confidence in metrics, even if numbers appear favorable.
Strong evidence practices turn metrics into defensible representations of reality. Control maturity measurement focuses on how consistently and repeatably controls operate across teams and environments.
Maturity is not about whether a control exists, but whether it is documented, executed reliably, reviewed, and improved over time.
Higher maturity reflects standardization, clarity of ownership, and predictable outcomes rather than heroics.
Measuring maturity helps organizations identify where effort should be focused, such as improving documentation, automation, or oversight.
It also explains why similar controls may perform differently across teams.
Maturity metrics support long-term improvement rather than short-term optics.
Key risk indicators align measurement with risk appetite and tolerance, connecting metrics directly to governance decisions. These indicators track conditions that signal movement toward or beyond acceptable risk boundaries. Thresholds define when escalation is required, ensuring that leadership engagement is triggered by data rather than intuition. When key risk indicators are well designed, they support consistent decision-making across the organization. They also protect teams by providing objective criteria for raising concerns. Alignment with appetite ensures that metrics remain relevant to business priorities rather than becoming abstract performance measures. Metrics governance assigns ownership, review cadence, and change control for metric definitions, ensuring stability and credibility. Ownership clarifies who is responsible for metric accuracy, interpretation, and maintenance. Review cadence ensures that metrics are examined regularly and that trends are discussed before issues escalate. Change control prevents silent redefinition that could mask deterioration or artificially improve results. Metrics governance treats measurement as a managed process rather than an ad hoc reporting activity. This discipline preserves trust and continuity even as tools and environments evolve.
Documentation retention supports audits, investigations, and trend analysis by preserving records over appropriate timeframes. Retained documentation provides historical context that helps explain why decisions were made and how controls evolved. It also enables comparison across periods, supporting long-term improvement analysis rather than snapshot judgment. Retention requirements are often shaped by legal and regulatory obligations, but they also serve internal governance needs. Without adequate retention, organizations lose institutional memory and repeat mistakes. Thoughtful retention balances availability with protection of sensitive information. In conclusion, strong documentation and governance metrics enable oversight based on evidence rather than guessing or anecdotes. Documentation defines expectations, records decisions, and preserves accountability across time. Metrics translate those expectations into observable signals that leadership can evaluate and act upon. Leading and lagging indicators together provide insight into both emerging risk and realized outcomes. Evidence, normalization, and governance discipline keep measurement credible and useful. When documentation and metrics operate as an integrated system, security programs become transparent, defensible, and capable of sustained improvement.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.